Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Blind Boys Politics. I am Nicholas Rod.
Hello, I'm Chris Baker.
And we have returned again for the thousandth time
For
for
another failed election.
fun times. Okay, but this week we have Mr. Pete Buttigieg, or as we're going to be referring to him in this episode, Mayor Pete.
Because some of us can't say his name. I won't say who, but I bet you could figure out who. Now, Mr. Mayor Pete decided to quit the race after a crushing loss in South Carolina primary. He was the first openly gay mayor presidential candidate. He rose to the primary's top tier, but was unable to build a broad coalition of voters. Mayor Pete's major positions included abolition of the United States Electoral College, support for a public health insurance option with an individual mandate, labor unions, universal background checks for gun purchases, protecting the environment by addressing climate change, a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, overturning the Citizens United ruling, and passing a federal law prohibiting discrimination against LGBTQ people.
All right. Well, so this one's kind of interesting. As far as climate change, Chris, do you know exactly what he planned to do? Was there any information, really?
I don't think we were able to really find much solid information on what his plans were. I think he had more priority plans with gun control and health insurance than he did on climate change.
Yeah, which is interesting because we've seen climate change be such a huge topic throughout this entire, through all of these candidates so far. I agree with the universal background checks for guns because here's the thing. Okay, myself, I'm a huge gun supporter. However, I do think that there needs to be some kind of background check system. I know we have checks in certain states right now. I'm not sure if every state has one. It has a background check system, but I think a universal background check system across every state, all throughout the nation, would be a smart idea. Because the fact of the matter is, we're seeing, dangerous people get firearms. And I don't think that's a reason to ban firearms, but I do like the idea of a universal background check system. So it's just kind of going about, it's just how to go about actually putting that into place. Now, one thing that we haven't seen up till this point, one of the policies, eliminating and abolishing the Electoral College. I love this. Personally, I love this. The Electoral College was something that was put together when this country was first made, when the Constitution was first being written, and when everything was being put into place in the government. The Electoral College was there because we were too young as a nation to be able to trust the people with a straight vote for our leaders. But now, centuries later, I think it's time that we finally just turn it, finally give in to allowing the people to have the straight vote. We're a democracy for a reason. Honestly, I think that an electoral college, now that we're an established first world country, I don't think it's necessary. I really don't. As whacked out as people can be, to say it in a nice way, I think it would only be right to eliminate the Electoral College at this point, and to just allow people to vote. Just give people the vote, because honestly, in 2016, if the Electoral College didn't exist, Trump never would have been president, ever.
I
And
would
that's,
like to add, if you don't mind, that the Electoral College, the only reason it's still in effect now is, let's say, New York State, the population is a lot larger than it is in Rhode Island, obviously. So the Electoral College is still being used for that a little bit more balance. So everyone in New York State is a Democratic state. So there's a lot more people in New York State. There would be a lot more votes for a Democrat than versus a smaller state that's Republican. That's why they still keep the Electoral College into place, and they would need to kind of figure out a different type of system. Maybe you revise the Electoral College a little bit, but that's the main reason that the Electoral College is still into effect, to still have that check and balance standpoint, that they realize that some states have a lot larger population than smaller states, and the smaller states, they would be drowned out in their opinions pretty much, essentially, really wouldn't matter compared to the larger states.
well, what's interesting, Chris, is that overall, if you look geographically, New York is actually a Republican state. The only reason we are Democrat is because of New York City and Buffalo a little bit as well. The entire rest of the state, if you look, is actually pretty much Republican. Um, but the city, especially, with its population of about 8.6 million, I think it is, really makes that swing towards the Democratic direction.
And it would
And
do the same thing in the entire country, because
very
there's a lot
possibly,
larger states than there is than the little tiny states, and the little tiny states, they would be drowned out. Their opinions wouldn't matter, and it's kind of as simple as that. The Electoral College is into place now for a check and balance type standpoint, but maybe instead of totally eliminating it, maybe consider changing it a little bit, rewriting the rules of the Electoral College.
well, I'd be interested to see how things would play out if the Electoral College was completely gone. I mean, we can say that it's a check and balance type situation, but we don't know. It's because we have states on either side, both primarily Republican and primarily Democrat, that are large states. So they kind of start to balance each other out in that sense. So I wonder if it'd be less of a problem than we might think. And I'd be very curious to see what a what our nation would be like without that electoral college, without what our voting process would look like, and what the results would look like if we went without an electoral college altogether. This is something I've actually thought about for a couple of years now. That it would be quite interesting to see what it would look like without one.
The only problem with that is you're almost wanting to run an experiment on the the next president of the United States to see how it would turn out, and it's not like you could do a trial run. This is it's a big deal. How would you test that theory to see how it would work out? Would one be totally weighed? Would you run two elections side by side to see how much of a difference it would make? There would be a lot of factors that go into play on seeing how it would pan out.
The best trial you could do is straight numbers. You'd have to run charts and graphs as an experiment, without an official election process. You'd have to go more off prediction than anything else.
And do you really want to run off a prediction for the American election?
Well, that's something that's very tricky to decide on, because if you never do it, if you never try it, then you'll never know what the turnout's going to be. Now, of course, the problem is with the election, it is such an important part of our nation, because now that person's going to be in charge for the next 4 years. So it's tricky, but that's where you really have to battle with the idea, do we try it and see what happens, or do we not try to progress forward into something that might be a lot better? Or worse, do we not, do we just stick with what we have and just kind of bellyache and moan and complain?
Now, we're not just rambling on about the Electoral College. We're talking about it for a reason. I don't know about you, Nick, but I think my personal belief is that this might be a reason why his election did not take off as well, because you and me, we're having a debate right now on whether or not to get rid of the Electoral College or keep it. So that might be why he didn't get many votes, because people are unsure what the future would hold if he did get rid of it. There would be a lot of uncertainty in there. He didn't really give specifics on what that means to get rid of the Electoral College, what the new voting systems would look like, and so on and so forth. That might be one of the reasons why voters were hesitant to vote for him, and he didn't get about the 15% needed to move on.
It's definitely a split opinion topic. I've heard people on both sides of this, just kind of talking about it separately with other people, not even talking about this election and him specifically. I've brought the idea that I've had about it to people as well. And yeah, it's a very split opinion topic. It's a controversial topic because people just have such split opinions and different opinions on their answer, just the answer to this problem.
This is a very two-faced option to get rid of it, don't get rid of it. The answer is either yes, get rid of it, don't get rid of it. There is no in between. So, that's probably half of his problem. He did, maybe if he gave a little bit more detailed plans on what it would look like furthermore without the Electoral College, he might get more votes, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I definitely like the idea of no Electoral College, but if I was being presented to about that by a presidential candidate, I would want charts. I would want numbers, predictions. Obviously, we're not going to have exact numbers because we've never done it before, but I would definitely want to see prediction charts, graphs, and all that. But as far as I'm aware, he never presented anything of the sort.
I agree 100%, and I have nothing else to say about Mayor Pete. Do you?
Nope. Poor Mayor Pete. He didn't go as far as he thought he did. For a while, it looked like he might actually go somewhere, but
he didn't.
His campaign kind of fell apart. But
womp womp.
But yeah, that is all. If you want to keep up with us on social media, you certainly can. For the podcast, it is at BlindBoyPolitic for Twitter and Instagram. For personal accounts, you can find us primarily on Twitter. For myself, it's at blinding_aura. That is at blinding_AURA. And for Chris, it is at C_Baker002. Baker, of course, as always, BAKER.
See you guys next week. Bye.
Later, guys.